Money makes almost no sound. That's the first thing that confuses people. When someone finally sits down with a real net worth statement in front of them, they expect the number to feel loud. They expect it to change how a person walks into a room, how they order at a restaurant, how they answer the question, "So what do you do?" And when it doesn't, when the number climbs into 7 figures and the person's life still looks like Tuesday, something inside them quietly breaks. Because for years, the reward they were chasing was never the money. It was the sound it was supposed to make. You've felt this, maybe not in those words, but you've scrolled past someone your age standing next to a car you've priced out 3 times, and you've done the math in your head about what they must earn, and the math never quite works, and you've moved on with a small cold weight in your chest anyway. You've sat in a meeting across from someone in a worn jacket and assumed you had them figured out. You've watched a friend get a raise and get louder about it in the same month. And here's the thing nobody says out loud. The people who are actually rich almost never bring it up. Not out of modesty, not because they're better people than you. There's a mechanical reason, a set of reasons, and once you understand them, you can never look at a display of wealth the same way again. Stay with me, because the reason isn't what you think. It has almost nothing to do with humility. There's a phrase for it, and I'm going to hold it back for a few minutes, because you need to see the pattern before the label will mean anything. Start here. Silence is not a personality trait. It's an output. There's a man I'll call Desmond, and he's the reason I understand this at all. 54, owns 3 laundromats in a metro area you'd recognize, drives a 2016 pickup with a dent in the tailgate he never fixed because fixing it costs $900 and the dent costs nothing. Total assets, when he finally showed me, a hair over $3.4 million, most of it in index funds and the buildings his machines sit in. Household spending, about $61,000 a year. The first time we talked about money, I asked him a question I now think is the wrong question. I asked how much he was worth. He got visibly uncomfortable, not embarrassed, just tired, the way you get when someone asks you to explain a joke. Then he said something I've thought about ever since. He said the number isn't information, it's a mood. Sit with that. The number in your account tells you almost nothing about your life. It tells you nothing about whether you can stop working, nothing about what your months cost, nothing about how long the thing lasts. It's a snapshot of a moving object. And people who've spent years actually building wealth stop caring about the snapshot, because they've learned to watch the movement instead. That's the first mechanism. Not secrecy, irrelevance. Now watch what that does to conversation. If the number is a mood, then announcing it is just broadcasting a mood, which is a strange thing to do at a dinner table, and an actively dangerous thing to do anywhere else. Because here's the part everyone misses. The moment a number becomes public, it stops belonging to the person who earned it. I want to be careful here, because this is where the advice usually turns preachy, and I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to be seen. That desire is not a character flaw. It's the oldest wiring we have. The problem isn't the wanting. The problem is what happens after. A woman I'll call Priyanka sold a small software consultancy in her early 40s. The wire cleared at just over $2 million after taxes. Not generational money, but the kind that ends a certain type of fear permanently. She told 4 people. Within a year, 3 of those 4 had asked her for something. Not maliciously. 1 had a genuinely good business idea. 1 had a medical situation. 1 just wanted to know if the number was really that much, which is its own kind of ask. The 4th person never mentioned it again. That person is still her closest friend. She didn't become secretive because she got greedy. She became quiet because she watched a number rewrite 4 relationships in 12 months. And she decided she'd rather have the relationships. That's the second mechanism. Disclosure has a price, and the price is charged in people. And it gets stranger, because the price isn't only social. Think about what a public number does to your own decisions. Once other people know, every choice you make gets audited against their expectations. The modest car becomes a statement. The nice vacation becomes a statement. Saying no to a wedding invitation 4 states away becomes a statement. You've quietly hired a committee to evaluate your spending, and the committee has no idea what your actual goals are. The people who stay quiet aren't hiding wealth. They're protecting the ability to make boring decisions without narrating them. Read that again slowly. Now here's where it turns, and where the whole thing stops being about etiquette and starts being about arithmetic. The reason wealthy people don't talk about money is that talking about money and building money are governed by opposite mechanics. Talking is an event. Building is a rate. Events are exciting and finite. Rates are boring and compounding. And the human brain is spectacularly bad at feeling the second one, which is why almost everyone who fails at this fails in exactly the same place, not from a lack of discipline, but from a sequencing problem. And sequencing problems are invisible until someone points them out. Let me point at it. Take $600 a month. That's a car payment upgrade, roughly. the gap between the reliable sedan and the one that makes a sound in the parking garage. $600 a month, contributed for 30 years, at a long-run return of around 7%, lands somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000. Not a typo. The gap between two cars, run for a career, is most of a house. And here's the part that actually stings. Nobody ever compares the two cars to $700,000. They compare the nicer car to the cheaper car. That's the whole trick. The comparison set is rigged, and it's rigged in a direction that feels completely reasonable in the moment. The real competitor for any purchase is never the cheaper version of the same thing. It's freedom. It's the year of your life you're buying back at the far end. Nobody says that at a dealership. Which brings me to the label I've been holding. There's a Japanese concept, shibumi, that gets translated badly into English as simple elegance, though people who actually use the word describe it more like effortlessness that took enormous effort to achieve. The quality of a thing that has had everything unnecessary removed from it. It doesn't announce. It doesn't decorate. You often don't notice it at all until you notice how much you trust it. Wealth that lasts tends to look like that. Not because rich people are aesthetically superior, plenty of them have terrible taste, but because the behaviors that produce durable wealth and the behaviors that produce visible wealth actively compete for the same dollars. Every dollar of signal is a dollar not compounding. Over a decade, the two paths don't just diverge, they invert. Now watch what that does to the picture in your head. The loud one and the quiet one are not two personalities. They're two positions in the same equation, and one of them is being funded by debt. Consider a man I'll call Everett, 38, earns $205,000 as a regional sales director, and by every visible marker is the most successful person at his 10-year reunion. Watch, car, the house with the specific kitchen. When you total it up, about $290,000 in mortgage-adjacent obligations beyond the mortgage itself, and a retirement balance of $71,000. He is not stupid. He is not weak. He got a raise every 18 months for a decade, and every single time, his life expanded to absorb it within about 90 days. That's not a moral failing. That's the default setting of a system where lifestyle expands faster than income and nobody sends you a notification when it happens. Compare him to a woman I'll call Ruth Ann, a school district administrator who has never in her life earned more than $96,000. She started putting money away at 26, never raised her spending after her second promotion, and at 59 has just under $1.6 million. Everett out-earned Ruthan by more than double for 15 straight years. She'll retire 9 years before he does. The gap does all the work. And the cruel part is that at the reunion, everyone in that room would tell you Everett is the wealthy one. They'd be wrong. They'd be confidently, unanimously wrong, and there is no mechanism by which they'd ever find out. That's the third mechanism, and it's the biggest one. Quiet people stay quiet because they've watched the room get it backwards, and they've decided not to correct it. Correcting it costs something and gains nothing. If this is landing, subscribe. This channel breaks down the real numbers every week. Now, the next part is where it separates the people who talk about money from the ones who quietly build it. Because there's one more reason for the silence, and it's the one almost nobody can fake. They stopped needing the reaction. I want to be precise about this, because it sounds like a platitude and it isn't. Somewhere in the process of building something over 15 or 20 years, a switch flips. The internal scoreboard, which used to require external confirmation to feel real, starts running on its own power. The purchase that used to need a witness becomes just a purchase. A man I'll call Bertrand described it to me as the day he bought a coat he loved and told nobody. He was 61. He said it was the first time in his adult life that a purchase had felt entirely private, and that it was unexpectedly disorienting, like hearing your own voice without the room. That's not enlightenment. That's just what happens when the anxiety that was funding the display finally gets paid off. And you can't rush it, but you can start it, and the starting is much smaller than you think. Here's the second calculation, and I want you to hold it against something ordinary. $200 a month. That's a subscription stack and a few deliveries. $200 a month. 25 years, 7%, about $162,000. Not a fortune, but it's 4 or 5 years of a modest retirement funded entirely by things you would not be able to name if I asked you to list them. That's not a discipline problem. It's a visibility problem. You cannot steer what you refuse to look at. So look at it. That's genuinely most of the work. The solutions here are almost insultingly plain, which is why they get skipped. Ask one honest question before any purchase over a certain size. Am I buying this for the thing, or for the reaction to the thing? You'll answer immediately and you'll usually know if you're lying. Automate the saving before you see the money. Not because you're untrustworthy, but because sequencing beats willpower every time, And the money that never reaches your checking account never has to be defended. Mute the feed. Not forever, not dramatically. Just notice that comparison is an input, and you control the input. Put the emergency money somewhere it earns something. A plain high-yield savings account will do it, and the difference over a few years is real. And when you start investing, start in the boring corner. Broad, low cost, automatic, ignored. The unglamorous version wins by such a wide margin that the glamorous version mostly functions as entertainment. Track the trajectory, not the position. Where you are matters much less than which direction you're moving and how fast. Ruth Ann's position at 32 was unimpressive. Her trajectory was the entire story. If you want the foundations underneath all of this, the order of operations, what to fund first, where the actual leverage is, that's worth watching next. This part only works when the base is solid. So come back to the beginning. Money makes almost no sound. You thought that was a disappointment. It isn't. The silence isn't the absence of the reward, it is the reward. It's what freedom sounds like once you stop paying to have it witnessed. Everett's life is loud because it has to be. It's still asking a question. Ruth Ann's is quiet because hers got answered 9 years early. The next time you walk into a room and try to guess who has money, notice that you're reading a signal that costs money to send. The wealthy aren't hiding anything. You're just finally close enough to hear how quiet it is.